Imagine being the kind of psychopath who murders your girlfriend, leaves her body to rot in a bath, and then just goes online pretending to be her. That's today's story. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one that's really modern because I think more and more, the younger generation in particular, is spending a lot of their time online and actually making careers out of spending their lives online. Even myself, I'm a content creator, that's what I do. But I appreciate that in the younger generation, there is this profound connection that young people have with the virtual world. And the story of Anastasia Grishman is absolutely an example of that. So this is basically a story where an OnlyFans creator was essentially posting online after her death, which we all know is impossible. But of course, the thing about psychopathic predators with low compassion, empathy, and conscience is, well, they can at times make the impossible seem possible, at least for a short time. If you're new to my channel, I release my content here twice weekly. If you are coming back here again and again, why don't you get your notifications on and subscribe, just so you never miss an episode. Also, there's lots of full-line episodes and podcasts over on my Patreon and my YouTube membership. So if you want more of this content, please do go over there and join. Today's case is one, like I said, that I think is very much symbolic of modern times. Because in the world of social media, in the world of social media fame, there are stories of darkness as well as of light. So often we see the shiny fronts and the bank balances, and it feels like an alluring reality to connect in that way with a world that can bring you so much. But the truth is that predators lurk in every shadow, including on social media. Anastasia Grishman was this rising star in Russia. She was an influencer. She was showcasing her posts on OnlyFans and TikTok. She was captivating thousands with her charm. And she was a really unique girl. The way that she looked was unique, very beautiful, but different to your typical online influencer female. She was somebody who was deeply artistic, and she was somebody with so much potential. But the problem is that behind the scenes, she was dealing with a person who she should have been able to trust, but that was so jealous of her and so desperate to keep her in his possession, like so many controllers are, that ultimately it leads to her death. And it's exposed the grim reality behind digital fame, which is really powerfully important to acknowledge. The reality is that sometimes all that glitters is not gold. And in this case, 100%, that is the definition of what we're talking about today. Let's talk about Anastasia's childhood. She was born in 1996. She was born near St. Petersburg, and that's really known where I come from in the UK for its cultural richness, but also, I suppose, its socioeconomic contrast, because it's a tale of two cities, basically. There's a lot of poverty there, even though it's a beautiful area to actually go as a tourist. Now, there aren't a lot of specific details about her parents, but what we do know is she ends up being raised in a modest household, and the household itself, as in the parents and the family members, they really valued education. And I think a lot of us can identify with just how important education is. Certainly, I think about the fact that my parents left school at 14. They spent their lives in, shall I say, semi-skilled work, but certainly they were both really intelligent human beings. It's just they didn't have the opportunities when they were growing up, and they wanted that for us. And my sister, my brother and I all went to university, and we all became professionals, and we've been able to create better lives, even in this climate, than my parents could provide for us when we were children. So I completely relate to the fact that her parents are very much primarily concerned about her doing well at school. Now, while she was being brought up, she didn't have significant wealth. And I suppose that when you are young and you're looking around at the world, and particularly at an age where she is, I was brought up in an age where social media didn't exist. I wasn't thinking about people with bigger houses and nicer cars than my mum and dad. It didn't even occur to me, because there were much more comparison bases that were local who were the same as my family. But if you have access to a smartphone now, goodness me, I guess you can end up being really, really envious because so many people just seem to have so much more. And that can lead to a burning desire, a fuel, should I say, that makes you think that you are going to want to conquer the earth so that you too can share some of that wealth that just seems so abundant out there, even though in reality it's incredibly difficult to achieve. Now, one of the things that we know is that her father wasn't present in her life. He was an alcoholic. So she was actually raised by her single mother, Elena. And that sense of abandonment, that can be really powerfully challenging because even if she had some kind of relationship with her father, he's chosen alcohol over her. And that's always going to impact psychologically and emotionally because as a child, you want to be center. You want to feel that your parent has you as their priority. And when a parent fails in this way, because of their dependency issues, it can really impact on your self-worth. And that creates a fracture. And we know that where fractures are concerned, predators are amazing at sniffing them out. Now, her mother, she provides a really stable environment for her during her early and teen years of childhood. But because they struggle financially, things are tight. In fact, in part of her upbringing, she was actually considered homeless with her family at one point because they literally couldn't put a roof over their head. They relied on hostels so they could sleep in a bed. And her mother would actually share a bed with Anastasia so she could essentially have some comfort, but they couldn't afford two beds. And that gives us a really good impression of the fact that there was a harsh side of living when Anastasia's growing up. And I can imagine her lying there as a young teen, just thinking, I'm going to create a better world where I'm not hungry, where I've got a home to go to, where my shelter is permanent. These are very normal motivations when you haven't had that security as a young person. Now, as she went through her teenage years, what ended up happening was her mother sent her to live with her grandmother. And the reason for that is whilst Elena clearly is devoted and loves her daughter, she wants her to have a better life. And she feels like her grandmother's environment is a better life. So because Elena's struggling to make ends meet, she's working really long shifts, this will give her daughter an opportunity to just have that level of security. Now, Anastasia's family and childhood friends, how did they describe her? Well, she was just one of those really creative individuals. There's just something naturally artistic and inquisitive about her nature. She was apparently quite hesitant and shy in social situations, but she always had this fierce and burning independence. People who were close to her said she was an introvert. She was quiet, she was introspective, but she had this unbelievable gift and talent for creativity. She had a really strong passion for art, and she would just spend a lot of her free time just sketching and painting. And essentially, I suppose it's the mix and combination of the creativity, the introversion, and the natural born talent that essentially shapes her later career choices. Now, she finishes secondary school, and at this point she decides that she's going to follow her passions in art and in creativity, and she actually opts for vocational training. She enrolled herself into a local institute which specialised in applied arts. Specifically, it specialised in the tattoo industry and artistry. Now, the tattoo scene in St. Petersburg is very vibrant, very popular, but it's underground. And to some degree, legally, artists often have to navigate grey areas and also social stigma, because even though it's cool and down with the kids, not everybody feels that way. And so she kind of engages in this subculture that is burgeoning and, like I said, popular, but it's kind of hidden to some degree. And this is because those interests that she's had throughout her childhood, throughout her creativity, is also resonant of her desire to find the individual within. And this collusion and collision of all those things together really worked effectively for her. It's like she had that fierce independence, but she didn't want to go down traditional routes. She wanted to follow her dreams. She wanted to take a different path. She didn't want to do what her parents had done. And the motivation behind that psychologically was this desire to break free from the lifetime of financial struggle, whilst at the same time just grabbing with both hands the passion that she had for her talents. And I think they're such sensible mindsets to develop, because every single one of you is ultimately talented. Mother Nature blessed you with your own fingerprint to let you know that you're a one-off. And that means that within each of us, there are intrinsic skills that we probably haven't even allowed ourselves to shine through with. And she, at an early age, is allowing herself to do that. Now, as I said, she grew up in the urban landscape of St. Petersburg. And because of that, there was a lot of diversity, lots of cultural trends, from traditional Russian values to Western influences, and she's obviously being exposed to social media, pop culture, etc. And like pretty much every other person of her generation, she's really savvy with technology and social media. I mean, I'm a lot older than the age that I'm talking about her now, and genuinely, I can't use a remote control 97% of the time. I really struggle with mobile technology. I can text and I can email and I can take photographs, and that's pretty much me. If I didn't have the rest of my infrastructure around me and my family, I don't think anything would ever get online, because I am useless. But for her, it's like second nature. So she's savvy with technology, she's savvy with social media, and this allows her that automatic self-expression. The fact that you can just share something online or be creative online immediately. That immediacy is just such a profoundly new thing. It's so second nature for young people, but for people who are older, we know that that wasn't the world. There just wasn't that outlet. But nowadays, you can just do something in 1 minute and you can upload it to the web another minute, and it can be set on fire on that web because it's so amazing. It can bring new opportunities to you. It's a whole new world. And so she uses this for that self-expression, but she also, in return, just like we all are in return, is exposed to the pressures and risks of the digital space, of which there are numerous risks. Now, she only actually saw her mother on weekends because obviously she's moved away from living with her. But it turns out that that relationship to some degree fades for a period of time, and she feels that the priorities of her mother begin to change. So mum's working more. Also, she had multiple romantic relationships with different men over the course of the coming years. And I suppose for Anastasia, she feels that her mother is prioritizing things that are wrong, and at the same time in doing so is neglecting her and the relationship between them. And the abandonment that she experienced by her parents, because obviously her father's dependent on alcohol, her mother's now hanging around with guys and working every hour God sends, it led to this sense of resentment. She didn't have that consistency as far as parental role models go. Now, her grandmother, she's lovely. So she's living with her grandmother at the time and she's supporting her as best she can. And the reality is that Anastasia has some issues. So she's got mental health struggles. She's also got an eating disorder. And those are problems that are very difficult to master. It's really challenging to overcome a disease like anorexia, for example, and to add to that anxiety, depression. It's a cooking pot of possibility for poor outcomes in lots of situations. But because of her art, she does at least have an outlet. And because of her grandma, she does have support. And that grandma would actually help her buy her equipment for art and just encourage her constantly to grow her talent. So she was really a cheerleader. Now, due to her grandmother understanding Anastasia's true passions, another naughty little thing that she did was when Anastasia's 15, she took her to get her first tattoo. That's actually illegal at the time. But again, what does that tell you about grandma? Grandma is asserting her granddaughter's needs over what the expectations morally and ethically are in society. And she does it for the right reasons, because I would say this activates something really powerful in Anastasia. It's like, this is the true beginning of her love for the artwork of tattoos. And she actually would later begin a small-scale freelance artist working as a tattoo artist. She would do them for her friends, she would do them for her acquaintances, and she very quickly started to amass a portfolio. She gained a reputation because she's brilliant at what she does. And this is all while she's still studying in college. And at college, she's actually studying computer programming and car mechanics, which just feels so left field when you actually think about this beautiful young petite girl. She's studying tattoo artistry, and I can kind of completely see her in that connection. But also doing computer programming, so clearly very bright, but also car mechanics. I mean, an all-rounder is what we would say where Anastasia is concerned. And she actually was very effective at using these kind of experiences to turn them into business endeavors. So she'd sell courses online, which obviously allowed those people to have help with their computer programming and car mechanics because she'd experienced doing this at college and learning about it. So she's a real entrepreneur, isn't she? However, in spite of all these entrepreneurial amazing endeavors, when she's going about her business to try to encourage other people to learn the things that she's learned and loved, the income from her freelance tattoo work and online work is irregular. It's also very insufficient to actually support the lifestyle and independence that she desired. She wants more. Now, one of the ways that she practiced her tattoo work was on herself. So over the years, she basically created pieces of artwork all over her body until almost every inch of her skin would be just this display of creativity and fashion, including her face with respect. Like I said, she's very beautiful with the tattoos as well as without the tattoos. And she had this absolute genuine love for anime and cosplay outfits. And she would actually style herself in these kind of outfits that made her stand out. And so she was constantly showcasing the eye-catching looks that she created and the body piercings, because she had multiple body piercings. And I guess that's what really begins the introduction that she has into the world of sharing posts online. So she starts posting pictures of herself in these various outfits with these piercings and the tattoos. And on Russian social media platforms, she starts to gather some momentum. Mostly initially, it's about anime, tattoo work, cosplay, and people really start liking the way that she looks and seeing how different she is in her subculture, and she starts gathering momentum. And now, because of that social media explosion and people are seeing her tattoo work, and she's going by the name of Grishman at this point, she's starting to finally make really good money from her tattoo work. Now, it's not until the years of 2017 to 2018, this is when she's about 21 years of age, that she really starts to build traction online. So on TikTok and Instagram, obviously, we know that the algorithm, particularly if you start becoming popular, pushes you out to more and more people. And that's what happens, basically. She ends up getting exposed to a much wider audience of traffic, which is so exciting. I mean, even me, I'm 150,000 years old. And with respect, every single sub that I get on YouTube or Facebook, I'm always like, wow, that's amazing. It's just such an amazing feeling that people like your content. So I can completely understand that if I was a young person, you could probably times that feeling by 1,000,000, because I'm old and dyed in the wood and a little bit more cynical about life, and I don't take things for granted, and I don't think that these things are always going to last, etc. Whereas when you're young, you have that bubbling hope and excitement. So if you're gaining hundreds and thousands of followers and likes, then the validation and the reinforcement, it's alluring, if not addictive. And the fact that she gets to 290,000 followers on TikTok, which at the time was really significant, I mean, it's significant now, but then it was really significant, she realizes, I've got something. I've got something. There's something about me that people want to see more of. So at this point, she enters herself into a TV show. This is where tomboy contestants were given makeovers. So basically the whole premise is that she's meant to be quite tomboyish, but she gets rejected because she actually doesn't fit the aesthetic criteria, which I kind of get, because she's certainly not tomboyish and she is much like And I get that completely, because let's be honest, she isn't actually very tomboyish at all. She's very feminine. It doesn't matter about the tattoos, etc. There is just something entirely feminine about her. Now, she soon realizes that where she gets the most impact online is where there is a level of being provocative. So if she becomes more provocative, she imagines that that's going to obviously mean that more eyes are on her, and also that's going to mean more money on her bank balance. So that burning desire for success, that desire to never be poor again, that desire to make something and someone of herself, means that she decides that she's going to expand her career and media presence onto the platform of OnlyFans. Now, we all know what OnlyFans is. OnlyFans has made multi-millionaires for a tiny proportion of people who are on there. Tiny. I mean, when you listen to the Bonnie Blues and the Lily Phillips of this world, you imagine that actually it is possible to make £1 million a month. But actually, in truth, usual creators make very, very little. And the things that you have to do on OnlyFans can sometimes, shall we say, challenge your morality and ethics. Obviously, people can pay to see certain pictures of you, but also you can take higher subscriptions and you can ask certain individuals who are posing for you to do a whole heap of other things. Now, listen, I accept that everybody makes money in their own way and all power to you, but it isn't as easy as people think when you actually become an OnlyFans person. And I always think to myself, even if I wanted to do something like OnlyFans, which I don't, I'd want to put my feet on because there's a whole feet fetish area. But unfortunately, my feet are the ugliest feet that anybody could imagine seeing. My big toe is smaller than the toe next to it, and the toe next to it is smaller than the toe that's in the middle. I basically have mutant toes. Maybe there is like a whole area of mutant toe fetishes and I could just make a fortune there. But essentially, this is something that she feels is going to work for her. But the problem is, whenever you do that, you put yourself at risk of privacy invasion, you put yourself at risk of potential exploitation. Now, she understandably sees this as an obvious path to travel down following her social media traction. She wants to capitalize off it. Also, bear in mind, it's at the same time that OnlyFans is growing as a platform really massively. So there's less people on it, but it's at that burgeoning point where it's worth joining because chances are you will get a good audience. So lots of women at this point are creating what at that time felt like a relatively achievable role to high levels of income. Now, friends and online observers noted that when she did her OnlyFans content, the whole premise was it was kind of a mix of blended artistry, fashion, and also adult themes. And it's almost as if she knew she was going into the adult industry. Let's just talk it as it is. It's pornography. It's soft porn to unbelievably aggressively hard porn on that particular site. But basically you are selling your body. And she realizes that there's a possibility to mix all of those together. So she's going to maintain the personal branding with the fashion and the artistry, tattoos, etc. And she's going to embrace adult entertainment at the same time. So she's going to try to stand out in spite of the fact that she's doing what so many other women are doing. Now, it's about this time she has the very sad meeting with somebody who will become her boyfriend, Dmitry Chernyshov. That's basically starts the beginning of a very dark future that lies ahead. Now, Dmitry Chernyshov, he's the boyfriend who comes into her life 2 years younger than her. They meet in 2018. Now, he already had a troubled background, so he had a criminal record from the age of 16 for theft, also for draft evasion from the military, because obviously you're expected as a young person to go in the military in Russia, and even if you've got criminal charges, you're expected to serve in the military. And so I suppose we can automatically see that he's somebody who doesn't stick to the boundaries that are expected, but also that he has a level of pattern of deceit, because we can see he's been done for multiple counts of theft. He's also known to be very impulsive and he has a very aggressive disposition. It's kind of the worst of the worst. Now, he did have a sad experience when he was growing up. His mother passed away when he was young. He was brought up by his dad and, of course, his dad's new partner, which isn't always the easiest thing to experience. He was also, very similar to Anastasia, considered as an introvert, and that gave them, I suppose, a bonding ground. It gave them a common feature when they got together on a personality level. And he'd actually made earlier posts of photos online with things like him in graveyards. So don't get me wrong, I was a goth when I was younger. We used to like going to a fair few graveyards. Don't ask me why, it's just part of our subculture. But he's doing weird things. So he's making these photos of posts online with him in graveyards and talking about his interest in death. And in particular, one that really bothered me is he said that he likes to walk among graves of girls much younger than him. That just makes me hear the word predator. Sexually inappropriate man around girls, all those things that are like alarm bells are just ringing in my head. I can't help it. It's weird. You like to walk among graves of girls much younger than you. That makes you a bit of a freak, with respect. Also, he had these really misogynistic posts, which were all about his expectation of women that he would date, and also posting that they'd be under 16. I mean, could this guy be more open and rotten about his predisposition and mindset around young girls? Now, friends didn't have a lot of positive things to say about him, with respect. They said he's really possessive, he's really manipulative, and obviously what we know from this case is that all of those traits are going to manifest massively in the most destructive form possible. Now, it's estimated that he and Anastasia met around September 2021. Surprisingly, they met in what can only be described as a little bit of a left field strange way. They met because Dimitri's girlfriend of 5 years at the time, whom he actually created adult content with, a girl called Margarita, she was a really big fan of Anastasia's work. So she ends up sending her boyfriend to Anastasia to get a tattoo. And that tattoo takes numerous days to complete. And so it gives Anastasia and him an opportunity to get to know each other better. Now, he himself worked in the porn industry. So obviously then they've got a common feature in the fact that she's in adult work as well. Bear in mind, porn's illegal at that time in Russia. So they kind of live in a totally unique subculture to the average Russian. And how would I say their relationship came across initially? I guess just as that typical relationship that young influencers would expect to share. So mutual support, shared interest, collaboration. And they had a lot of physical interests as well. So they loved cars, they loved tattoos, they loved alternative fashion. They both had experienced being raised with a lack of parental figures. But Anastasia, even from the really early days, felt that the connection was much deeper than just those surface values. And because she's in that intense time, tattooing him over days, it enables them to quickly build that rapport. And she starts to feel there's got a really deep connection. So they begin to meet up frequently as friends because Dimitri is still in a partnership with his girlfriend at this point. But over time, unsurprisingly, Marguerite is a little bit like, you meant to get a tattoo. You're meant to get a tattoo. You're not meant to hang out from now on like your best mates because you're a boy and a girl and you're a boy in a relationship, and I'm now starting to get just a little bit, a teeny weeny bit jealous and suspicious. And I think clearly there was an infatuation between the two of these people who were growing more intimate in the relationship. And I think that Margarita was absolutely correct. So she starts to accuse them of having an affair. And again, I don't think that she's losing her mind there. I definitely don't think that she's overreacting. I do believe there were some big warning signs there. She actually sends messages to Anastasia herself saying, I think you're having an affair with my boyfriend. And as the jealousy and the accusations just escalate, Anastasia and Dimitri actually go over to Margarita's apartment together just to reassure her, it's just our friendship. Don't worry about it. Let's just put it all behind us. Apparently the attempt was to de-escalate the ongoing situation. But can we be real about this? We know that Anastasia liked him. We know that he likes her. They can go over to the apartment to say that there's nothing to worry about. But it doesn't really make sense because clearly these two have got an investment within each other. And it goes horribly wrong because they're meant to be there reassuring Margarita that there's nothing to see here. But then she discovers that Dimitri's bought a car for Anastasia. Now, I don't know about you ladies. I'm quite a well-adjusted, well-balanced person when it comes down to relationships. I don't ask my husband where he goes. I just let him go wherever he wants. I don't have to think about it because I just have that trust and faith in him. And even if there was a woman that he was hanging around with a lot, I just kind of think to myself, they're probably just good mates. But if they then had a conversation with me and were like, oh, it's really nice that you support our friendship, and I'd be like, yeah, I like to be that way. And I really appreciate the fact that your husband bought me a car. At that point, things are going to change. Why have you bought this woman a car. It is not typical of relationships. So in an act of rage, Margarita ends up stealing the car and intentionally crashes it. Now, don't get me wrong, that is an extreme example of how to manage such a situation. But they do say that revenge is a dish well served cold, and one can imagine crashing the car that had been bought is probably going to fit that definition. And I'm not defending Margarita. You should have just accepted that you were with a lunatic who buys other women cars, but I do completely empathise with her feelings. She's like, how dare you have done that to this girl and bought this girl a car when we're in a relationship? Now, after the breakup with Margarita, this is when the relationship becomes more involved. It evolves into a more intense sexual and physical relationship. And it doesn't take long before Dimitri decides that, there's a role that Anastasia can present to him, which is to be her manager. Now, that means that he's going to manage her online posts. Apparently, he's going to help her sell the online courses that she's created. And that's always stage one, isn't it? Where coercive controllers begin. Why am I doing this? Well, because I love you, because I want to help you, because I want to make sure that you feel supported. That's a really good, significant way to make somebody feel loved and cared for, as opposed to controlled and manipulated. And I would imagine, first of all, Anastasia just doesn't think there is anything untoward about this behaviour. In fact, quite the contrary. It probably just demonstrates how much he loves her. Now, over time, it will not surprise any of you that Dimitri's behaviour becomes more and more controlling. They intensify. And he has a particular issue around her where jealousy and possessiveness is concerned. Now, in the year 2021, that's 1 year before her death, friends said that they really did start to notice changes in Anastasia's behaviour. So she was going through periods of increased isolation. She seemed regularly very distressed. And they also noted that the relationship seemed to have become very volatile. There were frequent arguments. There were clear instances of emotional abuse. But despite all those red flags, Anastasia continues to work with Dimitri. And one of the reasons that I completely understand for that is when you have built a career together, because bear in mind he's been managing her online world for a long time, it's really scary breaking apart because you're worried about a whole heap of different situations. For example, if you work together constantly, will he be entitled to half the business when actually it's yours? If he walks away, will he expect a big payout? Will he actually let me go? Will he do something horrible and cause issues with my channel? All those things are just real feelings. And that emotional manipulation and fear is often something that keeps people stuck in relationships they're unhappy in. He also went out of his way to limit contact with her friends and family. He would monitor her communications. He'd pressure her into producing increasingly explicit content for OnlyFans, because obviously that's going to bring the money in. And friends said that Dimitri would get really angry if Anastasia dared to resist or just tried to basically assert her own independence and autonomy. Now that tells you the danger that she's in. Because coercive controllers, they need you to be controlled on every single level. They need to be aware that you are not going to try to escape because you are their project, you are their possession. And so for Dimitri, he will pull out all the stops to keep her there because she is providing him with a lifestyle he likes and he doesn't want to lose that lifestyle. Because the thing about these kind of men is you are a possession, you're not a human being. And when you think about the life that she used to lead, where she's described in childhood as being fiercely independent, having a strong sense of self, and genuinely feeling that there was hope in her future that she could control. This capsizing and disintegration of those beliefs must have been so challenging for her to comprehend because you lose visibility. That's one of the things about violent relationships or coercively controlling relationships. You don't realize you've lost yourself. You're chipped away at piece by piece over such a long period of time that you don't realize that the you knew had disappeared. And then having to figure out where all the pieces are and to put yourself back together into some kind of beautiful but broken mosaic of the person you once were, it's incredibly challenging because most people don't even realize they disappeared until they're out of the relationship and they start realizing the lack of confidence, the lack of self-esteem, the lack of self-worth that's been manifested within them. And then they finally can go, I need to change this. But again, I was talking earlier on about the fractures in her foundation. She has been abandoned by her father. She probably hasn't had a strong male role model in her life. And therefore, when she's had this man who basically is very controlling, she's conflated control with affection and love, as opposed to seeing them as two distinct realities. She's being controlled, not love. Now, you won't be surprised to know that experts who've looked into this case, to do with the court case, etc., have categorised Dimitri's behaviour as coercively controlling. It goes without saying. And they noted that, of course, her self-worth, her self-confidence, all of it was eroded, and all of this was accompanied with threats of violence. Anastasia's withdrawal from social circles and guarded behaviour, that again shows that she felt unbelievably trapped in the dynamic. And though it was never publicly confirmed that physical abuse happened, it was suspected. And also there are confidential testimonies and witness statements that indicate several incidents of violence towards her. So she must have been living in fear. Now, the lack of public disclosure, to be honest, that's absolutely consistent and in line with how abuse victims often deal with this kind of issue. They're terrified of retaliation, they're terrified of stigma, they're terrified of people looking at them differently. And also, I suppose, there's that additional issue, which is she's an OnlyFans model, she's an adult industry model, and some people are really negative towards individuals in that field and are like, well, you were asking for it. That's a classic retaliation of many people. It's the same in sex work per se. A woman gets dragged off the street as a sex worker and raped horrendously, and people are like, well, she was a sex worker. As if that would ever invite somebody to violate you so hideously. But like I said, that kind of perception keeps people quiet. Now, the backlash that she could have faced online could have also been a motivating factor, but all of these things seem to have conspired to keep her in a really unsatisfactory relationship, to the point where in February 2022, they actually get married. And again, that's the pièce de résistance for a coercive controller and physical abuser. If I can literally get this person to marry me, even though I've treated them like absolute shit, well, that's a reinforcer and a permission base. Now, she ends up ending up on a talk show. And it's a Russian talk show, and her mum's with her. Don't know about you, not the kind of place I'd ever end up, in particular with my mother. But this is really a pivotal moment, and that pivotal moment basically exposes the complexities of her personal and her professional life. Now, the episode itself was meant to be a discussion about her career as an OnlyFans model, but it kind of descends into this weird intervention style confrontation. There are psychologists there are professionals there questioning her, trying to understand the reasons why she entered the porn scene. I do love the mainstream media, don't they? It's like, yeah, just come on the talk show. We just want to talk about your career. All right, okay. Yeah, okay, it'd be good for my advertising. Right, yeah, bring your mum. Why my mum? Well, just to have, like, you know, her opinion, because she might not have the same opinion as you. Yeah, she doesn't really like what I do. Brilliant. We can just have a discussion about that family dynamic, and it'll be great. Trust me. And then the day arrives. Why are all these people here? They're just a bunch of professionals who are gonna just come on with you. Why? Well, you know, we just like the odd psychologist and psychiatrist and general commentator just on a panel so that they can totally rip you to pieces and basically make you feel really bad for doing what you do. I didn't agree with that. That's showbiz. Honestly, it drives me bonkers. Because literally, I used to work in psychological assessments behind the scenes on TV shows, and I was not used by many because I'm really ethical. So I would tell the truth whilst having discussions with the people who came, and they had high drop-offs when I had been the person doing the assessments. Because you know what? My job's to care for the person who's going on TV, not to care about the people who are making TV, who are going to exploit them. And if people don't think that TV exploits people, it's because you haven't worked in TV. Believe me, they do it all the time. So she's kind of put in the firing line in that moment. And also, why should anybody be trying to force out of her the reasoning that she's gone into the porn scene? She's done it. That's her choice. I may not agree with it. I may think that she should have just worked on that tattoo artistry, which she was amazing at, but she did it. And at the end of the day, you know, God will judge, nobody else. Now, her mum, while she is in that situation, she basically goes on about the pain in her heart because Anastasia has chosen to enter the adult film industry. Just throwing it out there, mum. Maybe if you hadn't packed her off for grandma's and then just seen loads of blokes and worked really hard, never had any time for her, it might have been a different outcome. Maybe Anastasia is dealing with attachment and abandonment issues and she needs a lot of validation from anybody because at least that's more than she got being brought up by you. Sorry, I appreciate her mother's a victim in this as well, but I really struggle when the direction is always at the individual who is dealing with whatever life situation they're in without the collateral impact of all the things that's led to that moment. Now, Anastasia basically said, listen, I'm happy and I love the money I'm making and this is a career I've chosen. Now, the show actually brings out Dimitri's ex-girlfriend. Are we on Jerry Springer? Some of you younger people, you won't know who Jerry Springer is, but just look them up. So Margarita, the woman who's driven off in the car that he bought Anastasia and crashed it, she comes out, she's really emotionally vulnerable. And to be honest, when you look at them both in that situation, Margarita seems incredibly vulnerable, a little bit broken, and Anastasia seems completely opposite. She's actually frequently laughing about the situation, so she's not connected at all to what's playing out in front of her eyes when Margarita's concerned. And Margarita, I think there's a real authenticity to what she's saying, because she's saying, I feel sorry for you. I know that Dimitri is using you for your fame. And Margarita said he controlled me the same way. He made me do filming in the adult content area that I didn't want to. He capitalized off my fear of abandonment. She said he strangled me after the breakup, but Anastasia just defends him. Actually, Anastasia basically says, well, he might have done that, but at the end of the day, it was because it was an act of self-defense. You know, those self-defense moments where men just choke women because us women, we're so strong. You've got to choke us because otherwise we might beat you up with our hands, said no one in the history of the world. But basically, it's self-defense. He did nothing wrong. And Anastasia's mum, she actually states, this isn't the Dimitri I know. He is shy and timid again. Shy and timid. Two words that we can often associate with serial killers. You know, there are many serial killers who have been related to as shy and timid. Oh, it's a little bit on the introverted side. Yeah, I don't know whether he's introverted or he just like hides in the shadows a lot. Is introverted, is shy. He's just worried about making an impact in this world. Yeah, I find him a bit creepy though, the way he just looks around corners and then just doesn't speak. It's just shy, he's shy. Honestly, like I said, shy and timid does not mean behind closed doors, you are not a monster. And Anastasia and her mum are both laughing in denial at this point. And then Dimitri, let's just bring in Dimitri when there's a victim of his abuse sat on stage with a mother and a victim of abuse who is the ex. Let's just do that. It's not re-traumatising at all. Totally normal. This is all for the good of those who've appeared on TV. It's got nothing to do with ratings. Mwah, ha, 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 ha. So he comes on the show and, sorry guys, I'm going to say something that is probably judgmental and some may struggle with, but wow. He is so unattractive compared to both his current and previous partner. Margarita is beautiful. Anastasia is beautiful. He looks like the guy you might find wandering around churchyards by himself, looking for young teenage graves. Yes, that's the way he looks. Now, when he comes on, he's asked why he left Margarita for Anastasia. And as we would expect, he's compassionate, he's empathic. He offers her an understandable reason. He says, Anastasia is more attractive. Literally. Just stomp on the remaining remnants of who Margarita used to be. Yeah, I left her because the other one's fitter. Got nothing to do with how amazing Anastasia is. So surface value, isn't it? Anastasia is better looking than Margarita. Oh, and he adds, Margarita is a hysterical girl. I mean, don't get me wrong, she did crash the car, etc., which is a little bit on the hysterical level, but she was hurt. She was hurt. She was responding to hurt that he'd created. And Again, how humiliating for somebody like Margarita. And there was actually a section of the show that shows Anastasia showing off all the gifts that he's bought her. Look at all these gifts. Oh, you've got a lot of gifts. I've got a lot of gifts. Yeah. I mean, you got a car, didn't you, off him? I did. And now I've got all these gifts. Wow. Who paid for them? I paid for them. I paid for them. I mean, I didn't necessarily go out and buy them. He bought them for me using my money. But then he brought them back to me and said, these are yours. So they're my gifts from him, paid for by me. Doesn't that mean that they're your gifts? These are just semantics. He bought them me. They're my gifts. You know, at the end of the day, it's really ironic because she's the one who's made the money. He's the one who's happy spending it. And with respect, absolutely under no circumstances did he buy the gifts. He just bought stuff for her using her cash. Now, Anastasia's friend also comes on the scene. Who else is coming on this show? And then we brought her old school friends. And then we brought the man who used to work in the local shop when she was 6 years old. But like I said, this is how you make a really awful TV show. So friends come on, they're saying, look, we really support you, but we feel that your boyfriend has coerced you into the adult content scene. We're worried for you. And her mother gets really emotional. She's really concerned about the actual career. And Anastasia ends up saying that she would consider stopping it if it affects them so much. And Dimitri, of course, is like, oh, no problem, no problem. It's fine. You stop, you stop. Is it okay if I stop? No. Yes, it's fine. Didn't you just say no? Yes. But it's fine. Is it fine? No. But yes, it's fine. You should definitely stop. Are you telling me to stop? No, I'm telling you to carry on. But you should definitely stop if you want to stop. Do you want to stop? Yes, I think I do want to stop. But do you want to stop? I don't know whether I want to stop now because I don't know whether you want me to stop. Who's getting you all those gifts? You are? I am? You are? That's right. So you don't want to stop because you like your gifts, right? I do like my gifts. Right, there you go. We're carrying on. That manipulation is just classic because he's not going to support her. He likes the gravy train. Now, apparently things seem good after this show, but then as they go further into 2022, it turns out that Anastasia has finally started to realise that her life will be far better if Dimitri goes and spends the rest of his wandering around churchyards, spending time around much younger teenagers who are 6 feet under, who he can't reach. And she's decided she can move to another country as well. She actually had plans of moving to South Korea. She wants to open a tattoo studio, and she also has friends there because of all the anime and the fact that she's so unusual and totally creative in ways that really resonate there. Now, not long after Anastasia Grishman's TV appearance, her personal life apparently takes this really concerning turn. She gets isolated, people see signs of abuse, observations from acquaintances suggest that there's this escalating pattern of control and emotional manipulation. And in the months after that talk show, Anastasia's interactions with friends and colleagues and acquaintances, they just disappear. She's a reclusive individual at this point, and her only presence is maintained primarily through digital interactions. She has fewer personal engagements, and bear in mind, we know it is Dimitri who is running most of her accounts online. Now, that withdrawal from her social circle understandably raises concerns and eyebrows amongst those close to her. Friends said that just everything about her, her demeanour, the way that she seemed more anxious, the way that she was more withdrawn, it was all full of red flags. But there's no actual indication that she ever tried to seek any help or intervention, but that is so classic with abuse victims. Abuse victims are constantly controlled to a point where they believe that somehow they've caused the issues that they're facing. Perpetrators are amazing at that. They constantly make you feel like you're the problem and that they're the solution. And that if you leave, well, that solution's going to have gone and your problems are still going to be there. And it can be absolutely challenging mentally because you just can't make sense of nonsense, because that's what perpetrators do. They make everything feel like nonsense and you can't make sense of it. Now, Anastasia, fortunately at this point, did have another friendship with a guy. And I think the reason she was starting to leave Dimitri was because this guy was nice. Yeah, they were friends, but it's likely there was more of an intimacy around that friendship. And she was probably for the first time thinking, bloody hell, is this how a man can treat me? Where I'm actually validated and made to feel worthwhile? and made her feel good and made her feel pretty and successful. You know, when you have that comparison base, even though it's another person's perspective and perception of you, and that's not as strong as when you internalize it for yourself, it does light up with that suggestion that you need to think about what you're remaining in when there are these other opportunities that are out there that could transform your life for the better. Now, she apparently expressed to this friend that she was getting more and more resentful of Dimitri. She said that she had these dreams that she'd discussed with the mother about going to South Korea. So at this point, she then breaks up with Dimitri, and finally she's getting her life back together. She's going to pursue her plans for moving away. She's going to sell her car, she's going to sell her possessions, but she does also cut off the friendship with the new guy that she'd met. So that kind of appears to be left field because she really liked him. Now, her friends and family, they start growing concerned over her around this time because no one's seeing her in real life. Yeah, they're getting conversations over text and they're seeing videos that she's posting, but they get more and more concerned because the only content being posted were photos and videos that had already been posted in the past. Well, that makes no sense. You want to make money from your content, they have to be new photos that people haven't seen before. And also, where is she? Why isn't she calling the people that she loves? Why is she broken up with this guy, friendship-wise, that had such meaning to her? Why is she now just this kind of voice or vision on a screen and not in reality? On August the 10th, 2022, this is after reports from friends of Anastasia being missing because there's no personal contact, the police do force entry into her apartment. Now, there was also a report from one person who'd had this information that basically solidified the urgency of the case. Now, Dimitri and Anastasia, they had this mutual friend. And upon meeting up with her, Dimitri had actually told her that he and Anastasia had a suicide pact, where if either of them ever wanted to, they'd help each other. He then admitted that that's what had happened, that Anastasia had wanted to take her own life, so he had basically helped her do it. Because that's how it works, isn't it? I mean, that's how suicide works. You're feeling suicidal and you think to yourself, well, I could take my own life, but what I really need is somebody else to come and take it for me. I think what we're struggling with there, Dimitri, is that's murder, isn't it? It's murder. At the end of the day, there's literally no evidence at all that Anastasia wants to die. In fact, she was getting her life together, but now apparently she's invited him round to just murder her. And so he tells this friend what he's done. He then reassures her heartbroken friend that he was going to deal with the situation. He was either going to turn himself in or he's going to take his own life. And he actually said, please, just let me handle this situation. I don't want to inform the authorities of what's gone on. I want to be able to manage it. And the friend agrees. Again, backing out, no doubt, of the environment, thinking, I need to keep looking in his eyes after what he's just told me. Now, within the same week, Dimitri had begun selling her belongings. He'd also extended the lease on her apartment. So very odd behaviour, but obviously trying to deflect that she's in a situation where she's making plans and she's making money. So there's no reason to investigate the fact that she's not speaking to anyone. Now, when the police arrive, their worst fears are absolutely confirmed. Anastasia's lifeless body is discovered in the bathtub. Also, they could tell she'd been decomposing there for about a week. She had 13 stab wounds. 13. Actually, there are other reports that state more, but 13 stab wounds. I mean, that just tells you the kind of individual who is carrying out that overkill. You don't just want to kill them, you want to destroy them. Now, the court found that her death occurred at the scene, that she'd been multiply stabbed, cut, and also she had these partially penetrating stab wounds as well. Now, of course, who's the prime suspect? Well, it's the guy who likes wandering around the odd graveyard or two. So Dimitri's in the line of fire. They put a manhunt out for him. They find him within 24 hours. He's actually hiding at a motel less than 30 minutes away from the scene. So not quite the, it's all right, I'm either going to take my own life or I'm going to tell the authorities. Didn't, just tried to hide from them. Now at this point he's taken and is arrested. The crime scene showed that Anastasia was basically in the process of packing her things ready to move away. And you have to ask yourself, so was that the motivation? Was that the coercive physical controller and abuser bubbling to the surface and saying, how dare you think you can leave me? If I can't have you, no one can have you. And that he justifies his actions in that way, seeing the fact that he's no longer got that control, that she is going to assert her independence and she's going to get a new life, and he wants to deny her that. Now, when Dimitri was in the interrogation room, he actually told the police that he acted in a state of anger during a heated argument and then fled the scene after the stabbing. I mean, again, could you imagine if getting into a heated argument led you to stabbing people 13 times? The streets would be littered with corpses, because the reality is lots of us get into rageful anger states. Lots of us feel really upset with our partners. We don't take a knife and repeatedly stab them, leave their body in a bathtub and check in at a motel. Now, his story quickly changes because, of course, Dimitri is thinking to himself, oh gosh, that seems like a bit of a mission. Probably going to get myself into a lot of trouble by saying that. So what I'm going to say instead is, I'm actually the victim. Sorry? I'm the victim. No, you're not actually. Anastasia is the victim. No, listen. There are victims who are physical victims, and then there are victims who are emotionally manipulated victims, and I'm an emotionally manipulated victim. How? Well, she made me agree to take her life. So that's why I was made, because I love her so much, to kill her, because she wanted that. And in spite of the fact that I knew there'd be consequences, I thought to myself, you know what? I'll go ahead and do this. I'll peacefully kill her by stabbing her 13 times. Said no innocent person ever. But apparently she begged him to kill her multiple times. I mean, if that's not happening to you on a regular basis, you're not living an ordinary life, are you? I can't go down to my local cafe without somebody being like, help me kill myself. This does not happen in reality. It just does not. Now, he ends up getting taken back to the scene of the crime, and he actually acts out the whole killing for the police. So he is all chained up, makes it a bit difficult to move. But yeah, they give him this dummy and he has to kind of act out how the event occurred. I'm not quite sure why they did that. I think it's pretty obvious why the event occurred. She was leaving and he wanted to kill her because of that. So he stabbed her multiple times. Now, he did plead guilty to the murder of Anastasia. That was on January the 2nd, 2023. He then also admitted that he tried to cover up the crime by keeping her social media accounts active whilst her corpse was literally decomposing in the bathtub. And that it was all out of a fit of jealousy, like she was moving away and potentially the new guy she'd been seeing. So essentially, he was so egotistical, egocentric and self-serving that he wanted to kill her because he couldn't control the fact that she no longer wanted to be with him. In spite of the fact that she had good sense not to want to be with him, he's a horrible domestic abuser. Now, he actually got sentenced to 8 years in a maximum security prison. That sentence really doesn't seem to fulfill the crime with respect, but let me just go through where he's gone. It's named IK3 Penal Colony. That does sound something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Anything with the word colony makes me think of bad things. Now, it's actually referred to as Polar Wolf. So the facility itself is amongst the most notorious in Russia's penal system. Apparently, it's known for its really bad extreme isolation, harsh climatic conditions, and also stringent incarceration practices. It's actually established by Gulag prisoners during the Stalin era, and it's now evolved into a facility designed for housing Russia's most dangerous and high-profile inmates. So it's not going to be a walk in the park, let's say that. Now, the conditions at IK3 are literally the harshest in the Russian's federal penitentiary system. So inmates have to endure extreme cold. They often report inadequate heating. Some of the cells rely solely on a very small radiator, or even they paint representations of radiators on the walls. They don't even have them. Also, apparently, there's very poor food. The sanitary conditions are awful, and the whole premise of life at IK3 is designed to break the human spirit, making survival contingent upon total obedience to the guards. So you don't do it my way, you can forget having that painted radiator on your wall, mate. So obviously those 8 years will probably feel like the equivalent of 150 in the UK. Now, understandably, I would say family are probably devastated by that sentencing, and her funeral actually happened shortly after this was brought forward and this sentence was given. It was conducted privately. That suggests it was only close friends and family who chose to grieve together. They didn't want to be in the public eye. A lot of this had been played out in the public eye anyway. However, in spite of it being a small affair, shall we say, where friends and family just wanted to be intimately there, her mother did actually accept offerings of money. So she let the media come in, and they were allowed to apparently take videos and photos, which understandably raises concerns by her family because they felt the event went to a place of exploitation for money in the backdrop of this woman being murdered brutally by this horrendous predator. Now, in addition to the already frequent media coverage, a second episode of the talk show that she had previously been shown on was aired again on Russian TV. What a surprise! What a surprise! Oh gosh, have you heard, guys? No, go on. Well, it's a brainstorming session for our media and the next shows we're going to do. Yes. I've got a great one. Go on. That girl we really badly exploited, Anastasia, and Margarita, to be fair, but forget her for a minute because she's still alive. That girl? Yes. Well, she's been brutally murdered. So I think we should probably get the family back on, don't you? It's a great idea. Imagine the amount of people that would tune in for that. Genuinely, sorry, I'm scarred because I've worked in TV for 2 decades. That is absolutely how it works. But they get them back on. In this, her mum's present, and she basically speaks about the bad gut feeling that she had before the death of her daughter was discovered, in spite of the fact that she was apparently laughing and denying that Dimitri was capable of any of the things that Margarita had said last time she was on. But why hold her to that account? But she said that she was apparently full of worry because she didn't have a lot of presence with her daughter. And she also said how she felt when she found out the messages sent to her were not from Anastasia, but from a killer. And then the mutual friend of Dimitri and Anastasia, so the one who Dimitri told about the death, she went on as well. And she said that she believed that during the stabbing, Anastasia had said, "I love you, kiss me, call an ambulance." Honestly, I have no idea where she'd have got that idea from, but nonetheless, maybe he suggested that was the case. But it's BS. You don't say that when you've been stabbed 13 times to death. You are literally traumatically responding to the fact that you are dying. Now, what they also did on that programme is clearly contradict Dimitri's argument of being asked to help Anastasia take her own life, because Dimitri went out of his way to seal any vents in the apartment to conceal the smell of decomposition. Also, he was spraying a perfume everywhere, another futile attempt. And on top of that, he tried to extend the lease on the property because he hoped that they wouldn't realise that she was dead and therefore he needed more time. And that's how he would avoid getting caught. Now, to add insult to injury in this case, following her horrific death, explicit photos were leaked onto mainstream and social media. So she's being violated even after death. So essentially, even now, her life is over. People are still getting off on those photographs. There are actually still quite a lot of social media fan pages to this day who commemorate her death. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we should always keep the legacy of these victims alive. But isn't it awful that even after death, explicit photos are being sent around just so they can violate her further? What a world we live in today. Dimitri, I hope, has the most horrific years in prison. I'm quite happy if he doesn't make it out of prison. I don't think that people like him are ever going to be safe to be on our streets. And I do feel like his sentence was very slight when you compare what he actually did. And even in the UK, he'd have got longer, which is saying something. I'd love to know your thoughts, guys. Do you think that this is another classic example of a victim of social media? The fact that there are so many predators waiting to pounce on them? Do you believe that this is just another case of a crime of passion? And also, what are your feelings about the 8-year sentence? Because when I came across it, I literally had to go through multiple reports. I thought it was wrong. I just thought this can't be the right years. 8 just seems so minimum. Anyway, as ever, guys, let me know your thoughts. Look after yourselves and be safe.